In this video, I want to show you guys how to create a simple averaging program. But before I show you, I want to actually show you what happens when we run it and what it's going to look like. So when we run it, it's going to prompt us to enter a number and say stop to find the average. So we'll enter a number and hit enter, and it'll prompt us again, and we'll keep entering numbers until we want to find the average, and then we'll say stop. So we just going to enter some numbers here. Doesn't matter how many, we can enter as many as we want. We can enter floats or integers, so I'll enter both. And these are the numbers I want to find the average of, so I'm just going to say stop. And the average is 189.799999998. So that's the way it's going to work. If you want to figure out how to actually code this out, that'll be in the next section of this video. So for the coding section of this tutorial, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to get numbers from the user, and we're going to want to store them into a list so that we can add up we can sum up all the numbers in that list into our total, and then divide that total by the length of our list to find the average. So what we're going to want to first do is we're going to want to create a variable called total, and this is going to hold the sum of our list, and we're going to set it equal to 0 for now. And then we want to create our list, so we're just going to say numList, and we're going to set it equal to an empty list. From here, we're going to want to create an infinite while loop, because we're going to want to get as many numbers from the user as they want to type in. So as long as they keep typing in a number, we're going to keep appending it to our numbers list until they say stop. So we're going to say while true to create our infinite while loop, and then we're just going to ask the user to keep entering numbers, and we're going to store it into a variable that we're creating called num. So num is equal to the input, and all we're going to prompt them to say is enter a number and say stop to find the average. Okay. From here, we want a way to break out of this infinite while loop, so we're just going to say if the num is equal to stop. We're just going to break out of the while loop, and then from here we're going to want to append these numbers that the user has entered to our number list. So we're just going to say numList dot append. We're going to convert it into a float, and I'll explain why in a second, but the num variable. Okay, so the reason we converted it into a float is because by default, whatever we enter as input, whether it be a string, a integer, a float, a character, it will return an integer, or it will return a string into our number variable. So as a string, if we say stop, say we enter stop, we cannot convert stop into an integer. It will throw an error. So we have to first check to see if they entered stop before we can then convert it into a float or an integer and then append it to our numbers list. So from here, we have gotten all the numbers that the user has wanted to enter and appended it to our numbers list. Now we need to add up those numbers or sum those elements in our list up into our total variable. And the way we can do this is we can use a for loop to iterate through every single element in our list, and then we're just going to add each element to our total variable. So we can just say for x in numList, so for x in numList, we can just say total plus equals x. And for every element in our list, it's going to add it to the total. So now that we have the total, we can actually find the average by dividing the total by the length of our list. So we'll create a new variable called average, and we'll set it equal to the total divided by the length of our number list. And then from here, all the logic is done. We just have to display it to the screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to print, and we're going to say the average, and then we're just going to append the average converted into a string. So the reason we converted the average into a string is because up here it is actually a float or an integer, and we can't concatenate strings we can't concatenate floats or integers to strings. So we first have to convert it to a string so we can concatenate it to this string average right here. So now that we're done, we can save all this. And when we run it, it's going to prompt us and say enter a number to find the average and say stop. So we're going to say 1. We're just going to enter numbers. And then we'll say 2.35, 3.67. And now we want to find the average, so we'll just say stop. And the average is 21,365 point all these integers right here. So that's how you create a simple averaging program. If you got any value from this, I would appreciate it if you liked, commented, and subscribed. And I will see you guys in future tutorials.